You're just turned to stone, okay? This post contains at least one spoiler for the Pathfinder AP Rise of the Runelords. So, a million years ago, around 2010 I think, I joined a Pathfinder 1st Edition group that was playing through the anniversary edition of Rise of the Runelords. I was playing an elf monk and managed to roll decently for stats, so I was not useless. The rest of the party were rogue, fighter, and halfling ranger who rode on a wolf. This is important later. I should also say that this group is the same group of people that were playing in my previous Pathfinder group that fell apart halfway through the campaign. The first warning was that the GM was always complaining about how the book was written, because information that you need for such and such chapter on page 40, for example, was in the back of the book, so he kept having to flip back and forth. Oh, the horror! Anyway, we're in chapter 2, the Skinsaw Murders, and we're on top of a building, fighting a Lamia matriarch, who is a CR 10. We were level 7, I think. We're doing decently with some spells, good rolls from us, and poor rolls from the GM. The third round of combat comes up, and the Lamia can use a Medusa mask, which has an ability once a day to turn a creature to stone if it fails a saving throw. It's only a DC 15, as I found out later, so not a big deal. The Lamia targets the ranger as determined by a random die roll. Except that the GM didn't allow the saving throw because he didn't know that it had one or what the DC was. The ranger asks, did it target me or my wolf? Which is a legitimate question. The GM huffily replies, "You're just turned to stone, okay?" The table goes quiet. Ranger leaves the table, and we start to argue with the GM. Again, the information is in the back of the book, so it's obviously a problem. A few minutes later, Ranger returns and says that he quits and that we'll have to find somewhere else to play, since we're playing at his house. Again, completely legit. We kind of kept playing for another year, but the sessions mostly became hangouts rather than playing. The GM is still a friend, but honestly, I don't think I'd ever play in a game he ran again. You know, when I first read this story, I thought I was going to be ripping on the GM so hard, but I've recorded 6 takes of that, and it just doesn't feel right. It feels like the whole table is at fault here. Clearly, GM is not cut out to be a GM if he can't really figure out that he has to flip between pages and find the items he's looking at, but the whole table is really not being that supportive when their GM is clearly struggling. And yeah, GM needs to learn some patience, but at the same time, whenever I DM being an idiot goat, I really look to my other players to make sure everyone's having a good time and to see kind of where I've messed up a bit. But someone really needs to remind the GM not to piss off the guy whose house you're playing in. But that's just my thoughts on this. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments.